Number 10, Creepshow 2, 1987. The 1987 film Creepshow 2 is a horror anthology film that follows the story of the first movie. It may not be as popular as the original, but it's just as yummy. And in my personal opinion, I've always preferred Creepshow 2. So this movie follows 3 stories. The first one is called Old Chief Woodenhead, which follows a wooden Indian who comes alive after his owners are murdered during a robbery and goes after the ones who committed the murder. The second story is called The Raft, which follows 4 students who go swimming in a lake, not realizing that there is some sort of monster blob in the water and it's very hungry. And the third story is called The Hitchhiker, which is pretty self-explanatory, but basically a woman runs down a hitchhiker and leaves him for dead. However, the hitchhiker isn't dead and keeps coming back to attack the woman over and over again. Creepshow 2 has something for everyone, with lots of scares and a few good laughs. Number 9, Prom Night 1980. Prom Night is a 1980 Canadian slasher film directed by Paul Lynch and stars Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. The plot follows a group of high school seniors who were targeted at their prom by a masked killer seeking vengeance for the accidental death of a young girl 6 years earlier. This movie is a hidden gem, and it's also miles better than the 2008 shitty remake. This movie has a mixture of scenarios that we've seen in other horror movies. For example, a terrible tragedy happens at the start of the movie where the children make an agreement to keep quiet, which kind of gives you the I know what you did last summer vibes. Throughout the movie, you are left wondering who the killer is, which of course gives you Scream vibes, but this movie did it before any of them. There are some great kills, especially the head decapitation on the prom stage scene. And of course, the ending of this movie is extremely tragic with a really good twist, but don't worry, we won't spoil it for you here. Number 8, The Lost Boys. Now, some people don't class The Lost Boys as an actual horror film, and other people do call it a horror film. For me personally, I feel it is a horror film, and it's definitely one of the best vampire movies ever. Released in 1987, The Lost Boys is about 2 brothers who move to the town of Santa Carla with their recently divorced mother. They discover that it's infested with vampires. Now, after Michael is attacked by one of the vampires, he joins up with them, who have been living in the town for some time. Now the other brother, Sam, joins a group of vampire hunters who have been living in Santa Carla for some time, trying to protect people from the undead. Apart from the fact that this is one of the best vampire movies of all time, it also has one of the best 80s soundtracks ever. Now, I'm not really into vampire movies, but even I see this movie as an absolute classic. Number 7, Child's Play. Gunned down by Detective Mike Norris, dying murderer Charles Lee Ray uses voodoo magic to put his soul inside a doll named Chucky, which Karen Barkley buys for her very young son, Andy. Now, when Chucky kills Andy's babysitter, Andy realizes that the doll is alive and tries to warn people, but he ends up being institutionalized. Now, Karen must convince the detective of the murderous doll's intentions before Andy becomes Chucky's next victim. It's a pretty messed up scenario when you think about it. A serial killer living inside a doll that's given to a child. Every parent's worst nightmare. Now, when the movie was initially released, a large crowd of protesters formed at the main entrance of MGM, calling for a ban on the film because they claimed it would incite violence in children. Now, the Child's Play movies have also been blamed for 2 very controversial murders that happened in the UK in the early 90s, and the Child's Play movies were added to the Video Nasties list. Number 6, Christine. John Carpenter's Christine is a 1983 American supernatural thriller horror film, and it's essentially a horror movie about a killer car called Christine. The film follows Arnie, an unpopular teenager who ends up buying Christine the car. And as he spends more and more time working on Christine, Arnie's personality starts to change, and we later find out that there have been some mysterious deaths inside the car with the previous owners. Christine starts to get jealous of Arnie's friends and enemies, and bad things start to happen to them. It isn't long before Christine turns into this brutal killing machine. And it's literally terrifying to watch. I never thought I would be so scared of a car, but I genuinely was when I first saw this movie. The whole movie has this horrifying atmosphere throughout, and the music that's used is a classic. I mean, it is directed by John Carpenter, so of course the music is going to be amazing. Even to this day, there are some scenes that still make me jump out of my seat, so I can't even begin to imagine what it was like watching this in theatres back in 1983, a horror classic. Number 5, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is a 1980 American independent slasher film produced and directed by Sean S. Cunningham. The movie follows a load of brutal kills at Camp Crystal Lake. Now later on, we learn that the killer is not actually Jason, but is Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, who reveals that she is getting revenge on the tragic death of her son Jason back in 1957, where Jason ended up drowning while the counselors were busy having sex. Now, I have to say, Mrs. Voorhees is absolutely bonkers after the reveal towards the end of this movie. Like, if she was coming for me, I would literally run for my life. The movie is full of brutal classic kills, and of course, the movie ends in a classic jump scare when Jason's corpse jumps out of the lake and pulls in final survivor Alice, leaving an absolute feeling of dread at the end of the movie. Of course, Friday the 13th would go on to span a ton more sequels, but nothing ever beats the original, even if it wasn't Jason doing the murders originally. Number 4, Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a 1982 American supernatural horror film directed by Tobe Hooper and written by Steven Spielberg. The film follows a family who are plagued by poltergeist spirits, which results in daughter Carol Ann being sucked into the spirit portal through the closet and ends up communicating through the TV. The rest of this film is about trying to save Carol Ann and to bring her back into the real world. This film is a classic with lots of great scares, including a creepy looking tree and a very scary clown. Also, towards the end of the movie, a load of bodies that are buried underneath the land of the house, they end up making an appearance when they start bursting through the floor and into the house. And I'm sure you've heard this story before, but those were real dead skeletons that they used in the movie in order to keep it looking realistic. Poltergeist is brilliantly scary and a good movie to dig out on Halloween. If you've not seen this movie yet, then what are you waiting for? Number 3, Hellraiser. 1987 was a great year for horror films. So, Hellraiser is a British supernatural horror film written and directed by Clive Barker. The film is about a stepmom who moves into a new house with her husband. However, it's revealed very early on in the movie that she was once having an affair with her husband's brother called Frank. But Frank has opened up the Hellraiser puzzle box and is now pretty much a rotting corpse in the attic floorboards. When some blood brings him back, this stepmom ends up luring random men back to the house so that she can kill them and more blood can be used to bring Frank back in human form. Things get slightly out of control when stepdaughter Kirsty reopens this puzzle box, bringing back Pinhead and the rest of the monsters out of the depths of hell and causing absolute carnage in the household. It's a brutal yet brilliant horror movie, and I have no doubt that this movie has given some of you guys nightmares over the years. Number 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a movie about a guy called Freddy Krueger who terrorizes teenagers in their dreams. If you die in your dreams, then you die for real. Freddy was a child murderer who was set free after a technicality. So the parents of Springwood took matters into their own hands and burnt Freddy to death. This is why Freddy is now appearing in the teenagers' dreams as a horribly burnt guy. His famous weapon, of course, is his gloved finger knives, but Freddy enjoys killing the kids in all sorts of ways. Tina ends up being sliced and diced and dragged all around the bedroom. Rod ends up being strangled by a bed sheet. And Glenn ends up being sucked into his bed and turned into a bloodbath fountain. It's a classic movie that all horror fans will have seen at least once in their life. The movie went on to span countless sequels over the next 20 years or so, and it was also a poor remake that completely flopped as well. However, the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie will never get old and is still quite scary to this very day. Before we get to number 1, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We currently upload new videos every week and we are really looking to grow this channel, so make sure to hit that notification bell as well. Number 1, The Thing. The Thing is a 1982 American science fiction horror film directed by John Carpenter. It tells the story of a group of American researchers in Antarctica who encounter the Thing, a parasitic extraterrestrial life form that assimilates then imitates other organisms. The group is overcome by paranoia and conflict as they learn that they can no longer trust each other and that any of them could be the Thing. This film is as gruesome as it gets, and the effects in this movie still holds up to this very day. A scene that always sticks out for me is the moment where someone's body turns into teeth and bites off another guy's arms. Then the head of this body rips itself off and pretty much turns into some sort of mutant spider with a massive tongue. It's body horror at its best, with some genuinely terrifying moments, and it earns its place on the top spot on our list today. If you enjoyed this video, then maybe check out some of our other videos on the screen right now. We try to post new videos every week, so if you're into your horror films, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching.